I can't even begin to explain to you as to how many Rust wannabes I have seen in the last 2 years, let alone played and nearly lost my mind due to the toxicity that comes along with it from other players. But it's not to bash and shame the title itself. Even my parents once told me, listen, it takes all kinds of people to make this world go in circles. And honestly, I couldn't agree more with that statement. Listen, the reason there are so many clones and recreations of Rust in this day and age is simply because it's got a very compulsive nature to it. Not to all of us, of course, but certainly for some. Well, in today's video, I'd like to share with you another Rust wannabe that's certainly special and different from anything I've ever seen when it comes to this genre in particular. And what kind of special is going to be determined by you and you only. I'm assuming you clicked on this video because you already know what Rust is, but respectfully, that's not the majority of people. So to make this fair for everyone and get everyone on the same page, let me catch you up to speed, assuming that you know little to nothing about this genre. You spawn on the map and collect resources, a lot of them, and your main task is to start building as soon as possible because the nightmare will take its place and a lot sooner than you think. You pick a place of your choice and build a simple 2x2, and that would be the most valuable thing you'll ever have in this game. That is your soul and heart of the game. If any player gets inside of that 2x2 and destroys what's inside of it, you are done for and will be required to repeat everything from the very beginning. This genre has always been and will forever remain a full-time job at all times. Simply because you leave the server doesn't mean that you get to take your character with you or he just evaporates. The second you choose to join a server, you essentially sign a mortgage payment for the rest of your journey on that server, and of course I don't mean that literal, but just figuratively. You'll have a timer set on that server, and depending on how much resources you deposit to your container will determine how much spare time you have until you'll be forced to come back and deposit more. Because over the time, those resources get used while they're stored in that compartment. It could vary from a minute and all the way to a week or even more. Once again, it all depends how much grinding you'll be doing on that server and how much you'll be willing to deposit. Now let's focus on DuckSide. Take everything I just said and include the flying mechanic into this. Was I overly taken away by this system and just the concept as a whole? No. Rust is an oversaturated genre that's been recreated so many different times that it has gotten pretty stale over the course of its existence, at least for me it has. But that doesn't mean that I didn't have fun with DuckSide. As a matter of fact, it was a very refreshing experience. I played the testing version of it and it has certainly improved a lot with animation and how the duck would use the weapons and carry tools while it was in the air or even on the ground. The early access version is improved from the testing, but it's not perfect either. Depending on how powerful your system is, it will determine what frame you'll be getting while playing this game. I highly suggest, especially for a game like this in the first place, to minimize the visual aspect of it. If you are unable to get at least 60 FPS, then prioritize your performance over anything else. For a game like this, the visuals are nice to have if your system can afford it, but your performance matters the most. You're here to capitalize and go against players, not to look at water reflections. Also, internet connection is a huge factor with this one. Obviously, you are relying on the server stability when you join a game, something like this, and if your ping is too high, I highly suggest picking something more stable. Your beefy computer will have no influence on your internet connection, and I promise you. Now, if you played DuckSide, you will certainly recognize the UI in DuckSide. I think that's where inspiration came from within the name itself. Even certain sounds in the game sounded very similar to DuckSide, if not almost identical. Also, as a side note, and a fun fact I suppose, they share the same publisher, Tiny Build. But that's off the topic. Let's talk about the visual side of the game. I'm not gonna lie, I truly enjoyed the aesthetic side of it. It's very pleasing and eye-catching for new players. Even for someone who has had enough with Rust, it had a way of bringing me back to and reintroducing a new way of enjoying it. And obviously it's only for one and one reason only, which is flying. It's silly and loopy, but it was fun to say the very least. And if the fun is there, why should everything else matters, right? I mean, if you want to pinpoint ideas and judge something based on the looks, because trust me, I know that there will be people out there refusing to even try this game because of the cartoony looks or Fortnite-like. I personally never understood that mindset. I mean, art is art and respectfully to each their own. I've covered plenty of games on this channel that share the same assets and more than once, but if one title is more creative than the other one, even though they share the same assets, I'll be completely open-minded about the subject matter. DuckSide needs some polishment for sure. It's not anything game-breaking per se, but I certainly found it being annoying at times. For one, when you chop down trees based on the direction that they fall, they can create a visibility barrier, and often than not they fall through your screen to where you can't see anything, not even your character. Just like DuckSide, DuckSide has AI spawns and they are armed and ready to shoot you upon discovering it. Just be mindful of that. There will also be randomized supply crate spawns appearing randomly on the map and most likely located in one of the bunkers or camps that are surrounded by those soldiers. So pursuing that supply crate in this game almost always requires a fight, which will attract unprovoked attention from other players. The fighting system here is not the cleanest of them all, but it was easy to get used to and requires some practice. If you come across a player that takes down a full duo, which is completely possible, I've done it before, it's not because they're cheating, but rather because they practice and had some experience with the game. Due to this game being a new game for everyone to grasp, currently everyone is learning, and this is the best time to get into it, especially if you're currently debating about it. I can't even begin to imagine what kind of players and sweats I would come across if I would join Rust at this very moment, especially not playing it for some time. Now personally, despite how unique the game may feel, I'm still not a big fan of full-time job games, meaning you have to come back to them every so often in order to not lose the progress in the game on that server. It's tiresome and toxic, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad game as a whole. Some players are more competitive than others, and those are the type of players that will get a kick out of this one. Perhaps it's the right product and I'm just simply a wrong consumer. Let this be the main takeaway here. This is a good game. It's not worth AAA price or anything along those lines, and this is why it's not a AAA price. But the pricing was set fair for the type of game that you are receiving, and I'm definitely getting my money's worth from this one. They also release a roadmap for the future, and they have a lot more in store for DuckSide, which seems very promising.